Have you ever felt like your message, no matter how, brilliant or well-researched, just didn't land?
Mhm.
Or maybe you've been in a situation trying to get across crucial information, but the audience just seemed to drift or misunderstand, or maybe just not act on it.
Yeah, that's a common frustration, definitely.
Well, in today's deep dive, we're unlocking some secrets to truly effective communication, especially in complex fields, high-stakes fields like information security.
That's right. We're diving deep into the principles of what's called applied rhetoric. We're drawing our insights from, a fascinating Russian academic work, Applied Rhetoric for Information Security Specialists by S.V. Konyavskaya.
Okay.
And this isn't just dry theory. It's designed as a practical manual, really, about crafting speeches that genuinely get results.
Right, results.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack what applied rhetoric actually is, why it's such a vital skill for anyone who needs to be heard, needs to be understood. And then, almost like instructors guiding you through a key text, we're going to break down its core components.
Yeah, one crucial concept at a time.
Exactly. Get ready to maybe transform how you think about speaking and listening.
Okay.
So let's start with the essence of applied rhetoric. When we talk about communication, it's easy to fall into some common traps, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Like thinking, oh, if I just speak without fear, I'm automatically a good orator. Or a good speech is one where everyone just likes what I said.
Right. And the source really challenges those ideas. It points out that merely not being afraid to speak, well, it helps with socializing, show your abilities maybe, but it isn't enough to make you a good speaker.
Okay.
And being liked, well, it's pleasant, sure, but it might not achieve your actual purpose.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The core idea, an effective speech, is one that achieves its intended predefined goal.
Intended goal. So it's not just getting the message out, it's about getting a specific reaction back, one that actually aligns with what you intended. That's a huge distinction. I think many of us overlook it. It makes me think of that classic fire in the building scenario the source uses. Like, if you burst into a room full of people celebrating a birthday shouting, "Fire, everyone out!"
Yeah.
They might just laugh, Cheer your inventiveness, think you're a charmer. You were understood, they had a reaction, but was that the intended outcome? Probably not.
Exactly. Or the other example.
Duh.
Imagine you rush into a small office, 3 elderly women typing away, near retirement. You yell, "Fire!"
Okay.
They understand perfectly.
Yeah.
But maybe they panic, block the exit, start calling relatives instead of the fire department. Again, you got a reaction, they understood, but the action totally misaligned with your purpose.
Right. Those examples really highlight it. An effective speech isn't just about being understood or liked. It's about leading the audience to a specific desired action that aligns with your goal.
That focus on a predefined goal is the absolute key.
So, what does this source tell us? What are the foundational building blocks for speeches that actually achieve those goals?
Well, based on common sense, really, the source identifies 3 crucial dimensions.
Huh.
First, the speech must have a clear, predefined goal. Simple enough, but you can't hit a target you haven't defined, right?
Right.
Second, it must be public and addressed to a specific audience. You're not just talking in front of people, you're talking to them, engaging them.
Okay, engaging them.
And third, it must be tailored. Tailored to that specific audience and those specific circumstances. Think back to the fire examples. A good speech about a fire for calm, capable people could be disastrous for a highly emotional crowd. Context and audience demand totally different approaches for the same core message.
Okay, so boiling it down. Applied rhetoric is basically the rules for building an effective speech.
Mm.
And an effective speech is a purposeful public statement made for a specific audience in specific circumstances. And to get that effectiveness, the audience needs to grant you 3 things. These pillars of persuasion: trust, agreement, and adherence or action.
Yes, exactly. And in the original text, these are esto, logos, and pathos. Ethos is about trust. Can I believe this person? Can I trust these facts?
Okay, trust.
Logos is about agreements. Are their arguments logical? Are they correct?
Logic.
And pathos is about adherence or action. Should I actually act on this? Should I adopt this proposal?
What's fascinating here, and what the source really emphasizes, is that these aren't like sequential steps you just check off.
No, not at all.
They're layers you have to maintain throughout the entire speech. If trust ethos is lost at any point, the whole persuasive chain just breaks down.
Precisely. It doesn't matter how logical you are if they don't trust you. It doesn't matter how inspiring you are if they don't agree with your basic facts.
So you have to weave these elements Trust, logic, motivation through every single part of your presentation. From the intro right to the very end, it's like an ongoing negotiation.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act.
Okay, let's unpack this ESTA or trust a bit more. The source is something interesting. When an audience judges you, they're not looking at your CV or, your credit score.
Right.
They're evaluating the image you project right there during your speech. And this image, crucially, has to be purposeful and, maybe most importantly, non-contradictory.
Consistency is absolutely king here. The source warns, if you've had negative experiences with an audience before or your message has contradicted itself in the past, regaining trust is incredibly hard.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Someone who always pushes for strict law observance suddenly quotes that old Russian saying, the severity of our laws is compensated by the optionality of their execution, without any context.
Ooh, yeah.
That kind of contradiction can just shatter trust. The audience thinks, okay, this person is insincere, maybe manipulative.
That's a powerful point. So how do you actively demonstrate honesty beyond just, trying not to lie?
Well, the source gives us 3 practical ways. First, definite position. Speak from your clear perspective. Avoid vague stuff like the public thinks or the team believes, unless you genuinely represent that view.
Okay.
If you have to deliver a message you don't fully buy into, be explicit about the points you do align with.
Right. Find the common ground.
Second, diligence. Show you've done the work. You've considered all angles, even the potential downsides of your own proposal. It's not about being perfectly right. It's about showing thorough preparation.
Preparation builds trust. Makes sense.
And third, competence. You need to show deep knowledge, use the right terminology, refer to authoritative sources in the field, show them you're one of them. You understand their world, their paradigm.
Okay, competence. Now, what about modesty? This one seems tricky. The source talks about a dilemma. Being too superior causes aggression, but being totally equal leads to indifference. So where's the sweet spot?
Yeah, it's a fine line. The ideal is to position yourself as being in a shared situation with the audience facing common challenges, working in similar circumstances, but, and this is the key, possessing greater experience or information on the specific topic at hand.
Ah, so shared context, but unique insight.
Exactly. That's your differentiator. That's what gives you the right to guide them. The source also talks about handling age or status differences. If you're much younger or older, acknowledge it respectfully, briefly, and explain why you have the right to speak on this topic.
That's interesting, especially thinking about different cultural contexts. The anyone can be me versus respecting titles or achievements. So if I'm, say, a young InfoSec specialist presenting to older execs in a more traditional culture, how do I handle that?
That's exactly where the shared situation, greater experience model helps. You acknowledge their broad experience, many of you have navigated decades of change, and then pivot to your specific value. But today, I'm bringing insights into emerging threats that impact the foundations you've built.
Okay, leveraging your specific niche.
Right. And if you do have, obviously, high-status wealth, position the source as you need to actively emphasize common ground. Same school, similar early career path, shared background. The higher your objective status, the more you need to show connection to bridge that perceived gap.
Got it. Reduce the distance. Next up is benevolence. This isn't just about smiling warmly, is it?
No, not just being nice. It's about clearly showing the audience why your proposal benefits them, what's in it for them.
Okay.
And the source warns against pretending to be completely disinterested, acting solely for others' benefit. That can actually seem suspicious.
Really? Why is that?
People might wonder what's their real angle. It's often more believable to frame your proposals as aligning fully or partly with the audience's interests. Makes your motives transparent.
Transparency builds trust.
Okay.
And finally, foresight. This seems linked back to that idea of having a clear goal.
It is. Foresight means showing you've thought through the consequences of your speech, of your proposals. And here's a crucial takeaway from the source. Don't just dump information and expect the audience to make their own conclusions, especially if you want a specific outcome.
Right, you need to guide them.
Provide the key for them to act. Tell them explicitly why you should care and what you can do with this knowledge. If you leave them hanging, you risk confusion, inaction, or even actions that go against your goal.
And that connects to the problem audience fit idea too, presenting a problem to people who can't actually solve it.
Exactly, it's critical. The problem must be something the audience is responsible for and capable of solving. Giving legislative issues to a union or really basic stuff to a high-level government committee, it just leads to frustration.
Yeah, it makes you look like you didn't do your homework.
Precisely. It undermines your credibility, your foresight. So earning trust ethos really boils down to showing purpose, deep preparation, and genuine empathy for your audience's context and capabilities.
Okay, that lays a strong foundation. Now let's turn to A, pathos. This is about inspiring adherence and action, the emotional push.
Right. The source argues that any decision, even a small one, needs a push. Emotional impact is what moves an audience from understanding to actually doing something.
And the goal isn't just any emotion, right? It's about creating a purposeful emotion, one that connects the audience's interests to you and your proposal.
Exactly. The source identifies two main kinds of driving interests. First, spiritual or moral values, leading to what it calls ascending pathos. It appeals to conscience, dignity, responsibility, hope, truth, respect.
Okay, the higher ideals.
And second, material or practical interests, which relate to descending pathos. This is about profit, pragmatism, self-interest, efficiency, ambition, maybe even fear or anger.
It's tempting to see one as good and the other bad, but the source warns against that. It mentions Western rhetoric often leans heavily on descending pathos, while some Russian traditions try to ignore it.
And both approaches miss out, it argues. They miss powerful tools. The source looks at various lists of emotions to appeal to, but rightly points out they're often culturally specific or situational. Like, appealing to a sense of adventure might work for developers, but maybe not so much for InfoSec specialists focused on stability and risk reduction.
Good point. Know your audience's actual drivers. So what's the best blend for impact, especially in practical fields like ours, information security? How do you motivate, say, a room full of CISOs?
Well, for practical fields, the source suggests descending pathos. Practical interest should probably be the core. You're talking tangible benefits, cost savings, risk mitigation, operational efficiency. That's the bread and butter.
Makes sense?
However, integrating ascending pathos is crucial. Helps unite the audience, boost their collective self-esteem, and fosters a more positive, constructive atmosphere. The source gives a great example. Framing the protection of a domestic market from cheap imports. Don't just talk economic gain descending. Link it to values like diligence, responsibility, justice, ascending. These concepts resonate deeply within any field focused on protection.
Connecting the practical to the profound. That creates a sort of feel-good factor, maybe. Makes people feel a bit nobler, more aligned with higher values, and thus more receptive even to the pragmatic stuff.
Exactly. It can make your solution feel more compelling than one based purely on cold calculation. And this is a big but, authenticity is everything here.
Right, you can't fake it.
Overly strong or artificial pathos just backfires. You look foolish or insincere. Pathos isn't something you just sprinkle on top. The source stresses it's the foundation of the speech's design. It flows directly from the specific task you want to achieve. It has to feel natural, earned.
Okay, so pathos is foundational, not decorative. Got it. Now, let's move to bijek logos, the actual substance, the argumentation. The source touches on structure first, right? Saying a speech needs to feel whole, not just a sequence of parts.
That's right. The intro sets the stage, what you'll discuss, why it matters. The conclusion wraps it up, restates the main idea memorably, and gives your explicit proposal. But the real core of Lodos is persuading through the direct content of your speech.
And the source breaks content down into three basic types, tied to time: present, past, and future.
Exactly. First, principles and initial positions. These deal with the present, what assertions or principles are considered true right now.
Okay.
Second, facts. These relate to the past, what has already happened, what we know occurred.
Right.
And third, decisions. These look to the future, what will happen, what should be done after the speech. And these three really cover all the possibilities for speech content.
And these have fancy rhetorical names, too.
They do. Establishing shared principles and values, present, is demonstrative argumentation. Think presentations, awards, speeches, eulogies.
Okay.
Establishing and evaluating facts, past, is judicial argumentation, like reports, historical accounts, incident analyses.
Got it.
And discussing proposals and consequences, future, is deliberative argumentation. Business meetings, planning sessions, policy debates.
So the ideal logical flow is often demonstrative, then judicial, then deliberative. Establish common ground, look at the facts, then decide what to do.
That's the ideal sequence, yes. Agreeing on principles first avoids later confusion. Making decisions makes more sense after you understand the facts. But while all three types might be present in any given speech, one will usually dominate depending on your specific goal and audience. A report is mostly judicial. A new project proposal is heavily deliberative. You tailor the emphasis.
Makes sense. Now, this next section is really interesting. Commonplaces, or topos. This is about finding that shared ground, especially with diverse audiences or when opinions clash. It's about identifying what the audience already considers good.
Right, and our sense of good and bad is deeply rooted in our culture, isn't it?
Mm.
The source describes this hierarchy of cultural influence. Broadest is confessional culture, linked to deep, often religious-based values, but wider than just religion. Then ethnic culture, maybe French versus Spanish values. Differences exist, but less profound within the same broad confessional sphere. Then local culture, like Moscow versus St. Petersburg, specific regional traits.
And crucially for our discussion, professional culture. How doctors, lawyers, InfoSec pros think and evaluate things based on their shared professional norms and ethics.
Exactly. That professional culture piece is often underestimated. The source uses that classic shipwreck dilemma, who gets the last lifeboat spot, the old man or the pregnant woman, to show how different cultural frames give different right answers.
Underscoring that good is subjective.
Totally subjective from an external viewpoint. For a speaker, it means your definition of good might not match your audience's. You need to find their accepted values, their topoi, to build a connection.
And these norms aren't just in laws or holy books. The source points to literature as a key repository of cultural norms, addressing those eternal questions. So topos is defined as a value judgment widely accepted as true within a specific culture.
Key attributes there. It's a verbalized statement. It's about values. It's specific to a culture. And it's perceived as true by that culture. Like, children should obey parents, or a bad peace is better than a good quarrel.
Okay. And there are general topoi, like widely held cultural beliefs, and specific topoi, those unwritten rules you learn within a profession or local community, like that monkey experiment anecdote the source uses, showing how norms get passed down almost unconsciously.
Yeah, fascinating example of learned behavior becoming dogma.
So practically speaking, how do you use topoi? If I'm prepping a presentation, how do I find the right topos for, say, a group of network engineers I don't know that well?
That takes audience research, doesn't it? But the strategy is basically 3 steps. 1, clearly state your main proposal.
Hmm.
2, choose a suitable topos, a value they hold dear. What are their professional ethics? What keeps them up at night? What does their company value statement say? 3, build a bridge. Use arguments to connect your proposal logically to that topos. Make your idea seem like a natural extension of something they already believe is true.
Make it feel as self-evident as the topos itself. And the source even categorizes how you can build that bridge, right? Like defining, relating, or putting it in context.
Exactly. It breaks down the types of connections. Definition, equating your idea with a value. Relation, comparing or contrasting it. Circumstance, placing it in a context they understand. You don't need to memorize the subtypes, but understand the principle. You're consciously linking your new idea to their existing value system, using their beliefs as the foundation for accepting your proposal.
All right, foundational stuff. Now, let's touch on the logic. The source makes a key distinction here. Logic isn't part of rhetoric. It's a separate discipline, describing how normal human thinking actually works.
Yes, it's descriptive, not prescriptive for rhetoric itself. Logic helps you express ideas clearly, correctly, and spot errors in your own thinking or others. It helps you understand how minds reach conclusions. It doesn't give you the idea, but helps you frame it logically.
And logical thinking has 3 key traits: definite, consistent, demonstrable.
Right, definite. Every concept has distinct characteristics. Consistent, something cannot be both X and not X at the same time. Demonstrable. Claims need sufficient grounds to be accepted, and crucially, what's sufficient depends on the audience.
That audience dependency is key, and this leads to the 4 classic laws of logic.
Yep. Law of identity, meanings must stay consistent. Law of non-contradiction, A not non-A. Contradictions can't both be true simultaneously. Law of excluded middle, A or non-A. One of 2 contradictions must be true. And the law of sufficient reason. A statement is reliable if sufficient grounds for the audience are provided. That last one really highlights the rhetorical link.
So how does understanding something like sufficient reason play out practically? Say, explaining a 0-day vulnerability to a non-technical board versus explaining it to your tech team.
Perfect example. For the tech team, the code, the exploit, the logs, it's sufficient grounds. For the board, That technical detail isn't sufficient at all. You need different grounds: potential financial loss, reputational harm, regulatory penalties. The definition of sufficient changes completely based on the audience.
Right. The source also emphasizes judgment and concept for rhetoric. A judgment links a subject and attribute. Dolphins are mammals. A concept is the set of attributes defining something.
And importantly, the source says, for public speech, stick to everyday concepts unless you explicitly define a specialized one. Don't assume shared technical understanding. Also, understanding the volume of a concept, all the things it covers, helps clarify relationships between ideas.
So the details about how concepts relate, subordinate, intersecting, contradictory, we don't need to master formal logic, but the point for a speaker is precision, isn't it?
Absolutely. Be precise. If you say threats, do you mean all threats or just ransomware? Using terms loosely leads to misunderstanding. If you frame two options as contradictory, only one can be true, when they're just opposite, other options exist, you're misleading the audience. Logic helps you structure arguments accurately and clearly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of the why and what. Now let's get into the how, the 5 steps of actually working on a speech, starting with invention, crafting the core idea.
Right. And invention here isn't about pulling ideas out of thin air. It's about taking an existing problem and making it acutely relevant and urgent for this specific audience right now, making an old problem seem new or a new problem feel familiar and pressing.
So finding that timely angle.
Exactly. The goal is to build a coherent design for an effective message, tailored perfectly. And a key rule here, the one main idea rule: every effective speech needs a single, clear main point or proposal. Longer talks might have sub-ideas, but they must clearly support that central one.
Otherwise, you lose people.
You do. And that proposal, what you're offering the audience, needs to be clear, complete, debatable, and productive. It has to lead somewhere. And back to that earlier point, the problem you frame must be something the audience feels responsible for and capable of addressing.
Okay, proposal defined. Then you move to arrangement structuring for impact.
Yeah, and how you order things sends its own message. The classic parts are introduction, thesis, your proposal plus main supporting point, division, the plan, narration, facts, justification, arguments, refutation, addressing counter-arguments, generalization, summary, and exhortation, call to action.
Intro first, exhortation last, always. But the middle parts can be shifted around strategically.
That's right, based on your goal and audience. The introduction itself needs to grab attention, build interest, establish common ground, and crucially, build that initial trust, ethos.
And the source mentions special interest for tough crowds.
Yes, the oratorical precaution. It's a longer, more detailed intro for hostile or resistant audiences. You empathize, find deeper commonalities, acknowledge the resistance gently, attribute it maybe to collective emotion, suggest looking objectively, and then slowly transition to analysis to calm things down.
A careful de-escalation.
Exactly. And then there's the risky in-the-crowd technique for highly agitated audiences trying to harness that raw emotion, maybe escalate it slightly through chanting or slogans, and then redirect it towards your purpose. Very high stakes, easy to backfire.
Wow. Okay, then comes division, the roadmap for the speech.
Helps everyone follow along. 3 types mentioned: subject division, breaking down the topic like SEI features, costs; content division, listing the points you'll cover; and polemical division, structuring your opponent's view for easy takedown. The absolute rule: don't mix these types in one speech. It causes confusion. One main idea, one type of division per speech.
Got it. Keep it clean, then narration presenting the facts.
Right. And the rule of thumb is, put your most important, undeniable facts early. Facts that need more discussion or interpretation come later. Narration itself can be storytelling, dynamic plot, description, static image, or explanation, your interpretation.
And for explanation, the key is clarity and separation.
Absolutely. Connect the unknown to the known, state your explanatory stance clearly, and critically, separate the fact itself from your explanation of it. Like the SEI vulnerability example. State the fact passive SEIs have this vulnerability, then explain why, using maybe a relatable analogy about signal interception. Fact first, then explanation.
Clear separation. Okay, then justification supporting your main idea with arguments.
The ideal structure here is the Homeric order. Start strong, put weaker points, maybe with emotional examples, in the middle, and end with your single strongest argument. Keep strong arguments concise, expand on weaker ones to give them weight.
Start strong, end strongest.
The source also mentions CREA, a classical method for defending a thesis by systematically addressing potential objections, causes, comparisons, examples, authorities. You don't need the ancient formula, but the idea of preemptively tackling objections is powerful. Generally, keep justification focused. Don't overload with arguments, structure them logically, and aim strong arguments at the audience's interests.
Right, relevance is key. And in competitive fields like ours, refutation of incompatible views is often necessary.
Yes, proving opposing views wrong or unacceptable. This is a speech part, not just a logical technique like proof by contradiction. You only refute when your position needs defending.
And there are two ways to do it.
Dialectical refutation is for when the audience holds the opposing view. The goal is truth through discussion, not attack. Show their alternative won't work well. Polemical refutation is when a third-party opponent influences the audience. Here, you can challenge the competitor's validity, maybe even motives or competence, if it's true and relevant.
Okay, different approaches, but common principles.
Describe the criticized view accurately. Separate what's right from wrong in it. Focus criticism on fundamentals. Clearly state your alternative. For polemical stuff, connect your criticism to the audience's topoi, their values. And often, it's smarter to let the audience draw the final negative conclusion themselves.
Rather than stating it baldly, like the SZI example. Don't say passive is bad, say passive can work, but it's way more complex and expensive than active systems. Let them connect the dots.
Exactly. Guide them, don't just declare.
All right, step 3, elocution. The craft of the actual text, the language.
And it's more than just grammar. Proper language is necessary but not sufficient. Style is crucial. The source-defined style is the conscious choice of expressive means that creates an image of the speech, of you, and becomes a basis for how they judge you.
And there are layers of style: historical, functional, occasional, individual. Individual style is a bonus, but the others are more like rules you need to follow.
Pretty much. You need to operate within the expected functional style for the context. The source also brings up Lomonosov's 3 styles, or registers: high, middle, neutral, low, simple, familiar. It warns about the current trend in some circles towards oversimplification.
How does that play out professionally, like in InfoSec, using too much low or overly familiar language?
It can backfire. It might seem disrespectful or unprofessional, undermining your authority. You want approachability, but not inappropriate familiarity. This leads to slog, the overall quality of expression. Is it understandable? Acceptable.
And the 5 qualities of good slog are correctness, purity, linguistic consistency, clarity, immediate understanding, appropriateness, right register, and harmony, sounding right.
Basically, is your language accurate, consistent, easy to grasp, suitable for the situation, and does it just flow well? It's about making language work for you strategically. This ties into the functional styles.
Right. Scientific, objective, technical, journalistic, mass appeal, impact, official business, formal, regulated, everyday, colloquial, informal, spontaneous.
And the crucial advice is not to just pick one.
Ah, so you need to blend them carefully.
Yes, to engage and clarify. Explaining complex regulations might need a mix. Official business for the rule itself, scientific for the technical why, maybe a touch of colloquial for a clear analogy. It's about strategic combination for maximum clarity and impact.
Okay, strategic blending. Step 4 is memory, but not rote memorization.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
True memory comes from deep understanding of the speech's structure and purpose. That concentric circle of design idea, if you grasp the goal, thesis, arguments, language choices, you can logically reconstruct it, even if you forget specific words.
So notes should just be for precise facts, dates, names, quotes.
Exactly, a safety net, not a script. The source strongly warns against reading full scripts. I know it feels safer sometimes.
Yeah, I've done it. And you just end up glued to the page, lose connection.
It kills natural delivery, engagement, improvisation. If you lose your place, panic. Full scripts are okay only for very specific genres, formal reports, reading someone else's text. Otherwise, a well-structured outline, a plan, is your best friend.
Even if you don't follow it exactly during delivery.
Yes. It disciplines your memory, provides a mental map, but gives you freedom to adapt, expand, contract as needed. Keep the plan concise, legible, highlight key phrases, include all crucial facts figures. It's a guide, not a cage.
Makes sense. And finally, step 5, action. Bringing the speech to life as an event.
And the key here is everything counts, from the moment you're introduced until you walk away. Managing visuals, handouts, even how you interact with the presidium, those important folks often seated at the front.
Treat them like a secondary audience.
Yes, engage them. Make sure they can see and hear. If they seem engaged, it boosts your authority with the wider audience. Also, if working with an interpreter, remember they're an audience member too. Their engagement helps the translation. But keep your main focus on the ultimate audience.
And then the delivery elements. Voice, gestures, appearance. Appearance feels superficial sometimes, but it really does send a message, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Voice needs clarity, good modulation practice to avoid that high nervous pitch. Practice tricky words. Gestures, facial expressions, rehearse in a mirror. Avoid distracting habits. And appearance is vital for credibility. Look rested, groomed, dress appropriately. Usually lean towards more formal, at least as formal as your audience.
Shows respect, shows you think the event is important.
Exactly. Avoid extremes. Your appearance should subtly reinforce your message. Use visuals, diagrams, illustrations, maybe even physical objects if it feels natural to enhance understanding. But avoid awkwardness if using prompts.
And watch out for unconscious fidgeting or rocking.
Unless it's a deliberate rhetorical trick, like that legendary professor dropping his cane. Otherwise, it just distracts. The ultimate goal, always, is not just to perform, but to have the audience accept your proposal and be moved to action.
Wow. Okay, so we've really unpacked applied rhetoric, built on trust, esto, logic, logos, and emotional connection, pathos. We've looked at finding common ground with topoi, the role of logic, and that detailed five-step process: invention, arrangement, elocution, memory, action.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive framework. And these principles, whether you're prepping for a massive presentation or just a crucial conversation, they provide a roadmap, a way to be not just understood, but actually heard and hopefully acted upon.
So as you go about your day, maybe start listening for these things. In the news, in meetings, even in other deep dives. How are speakers trying to build trust? Or maybe breaking it? Where are they using logic? Where are they appealing to emotion?
And maybe think, what might you do differently next time you need to persuade someone? The world really does become your own rhetorical laboratory once you start noticing these things.